Brought to you by Take Root Training. Talking Potheads is a panel podcast for budtenders, bringing together experts from around the cannabis industry to discuss the fundamentals of selling weed in a dispensary. Each week, we dive into another topic to help budtenders understand these products and empower them on the sales floor. Grab some weed and your favorite munchies, and let's talk pot.
Welcome to the Talking Potheads. We're the Chronic Gals. I'm your host, Rileigh.
And I'm your host, Ashleen. On today's show, we're taking a look at edibles and drinkables, how they work in the body, and how edibles have evolved with the new technology that's available to us today. In our budtender training course, Root Knowledge, A Budtender's Guide to Cannabis, we explain that cannabinoids are lipophilic, which means they love fat. Soaking cannabis in some sort of base fat like butter, coconut oil, or olive oil allows that fat to infuse with THC, CBD, and other minor cannabinoids. Then when you eat that infused fat, it triggers an effect in the endocannabinoid system, and the THC makes you feel high. It's this basic process that industry pioneers have built off of. So what started as homemade brownies and Rice Krispie treats has evolved into products like infused sparkling wine and gourmet truffles. Edibles have gotten a bad rap, though, as they're associated with stories of folks taking too many and having really bad trips. Experiences like that can make people afraid to try cannabis ever again, and in them, the stigma lives on. So let's talk about how to coach customers with edibles in a way that makes a pleasant experience more likely for them. But first, let's take a moment to welcome our guests, Shannon Blakeman and Austin Essary. Thank you guys both for being here. Shannon, you're a returning guest, so thank you so much for being with us again. And you're a budtender here in Vancouver, Washington. So we learned a little bit about you last time. Today, can you tell us what's in your stash box?
I have a couple of things with me today. I actually brought in my Wild Side Max, which is a Nano-Infused. It is broken down into a nano particle so that it's very easy to absorb, and it usually kicks in for me within about anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, which is fast when you get an edible. Most of the time, you can usually take anywhere from an hour to an hour and 45 minutes for an edible to kick in. Usually when we start talking badly about it is usually when it will be like, oh, hello, here is the edible that we took. So that's why I like the drinks, is that they are very easy to like microdose, because it just got 10 servings in it, but you can just take a little sip of it, which is nice, and it's very fast acting. And then we also have RSO today, a couple different kinds, but yeah, that's in my stash box today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And Austin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company and how you got into edibles and what you guys are doing in the edible space?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me on. And Shannon, cool product. I like seeing the Nano-Emulsified products. It makes it a lot more predictable experience, which is really what we're driving for at Landrace Bioscience, which is who I'm with. I'm the sales director and marketing director at Landrace Bio, and we are a white label product manufacturer of cannabis, edibles, tinctures, topicals, and beverages. And we have a proprietary patented nano-emulsification technology called SENS technology.
Amazing. We're excited to get into that with you. I know Shannon already mentioned the nano-emulsification, so we're definitely going to get into that. But we want to start with some of the basics.
Mm-hmm. So in the intro, we talked about how edibles work, but there's another piece to that, to what makes edibles stand out as a unique consumption method. The high feels totally different than when you smoke cannabis. So why is the high different from when you smoke than when you eat? Shannon, can you answer that?
So it takes a while to get from the stomach into the upper intestine, where then it can actually be sent to the liver and broken down and made into tetrahydrocannabinol delta 9 acylic acid, I believe.
That's pretty
a little
well
bit
said.
longer. So
if
it
I have
changes.
to say myself,
Yeah.
That's a mouthful.
And so once it can be broken into that from the liver, and it is actually quite a hard molecule for the liver to break down. So when it has some sort of an oil with it, or when we're able to break it down in emulsification, it's much easier absorbed through the liver. So a lot of times people that try an edible, they say, I can take so many edibles and they just don't do anything. So sometimes they need more of a fatty acid with it so it can actually be absorbed. But once it's broken down in the liver, then it can ride the blood flow up to the brain and actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And that's usually when we feel that kick of, holy, that's when we know that edible is kicking in, is because it's actually working on the C2 receptors throughout our body and not so much our C1 receptors, which are mostly our head, which are activated when we smoke. So a lot of times when we feel an edible, especially in smaller doses, it can almost feeling like you got off a boat when you're walking around. You're like, oh, there it is. That's the edible I took earlier.
That's such a good description.
Yeah,
That's a
and
good
we don't have to
analogy.
get crazy. Microdosing is so helpful, and then we have that clear-headed perspectiveness, but we're still able to function throughout the day, which I think is really awesome. But yeah, go ahead, your turn. I want to hear the science on this.
Happy to speak to it a little bit. I think that a lot of the cannabis terms in the industry, we've got all these sciencey terms that sound really cool and crazy, and most of them are pretty cool and crazy because it is science. But I think that maybe the easiest way, the simplest way that I think of an emulsion is really just a term describing oil dispersed in water. I think if you take a bottle of Italian salad dressing, for instance, and you shake it up a whole bunch, you're going to see these big droplets in that vinegar base, and they're going to disperse over the next few minutes, if you will. And that's an emulsion right there. We've come a long ways now in the industry, and we've found different ways to nano-emulsify product. And nano-emulsifying really is just taking it a next step and making that molecule, whether you're using ultrasonication or shearing or different technology that you may be using, that nanotech. Our technology SENS is a liquid matrix. And so it actually results when you mix cannabinoids with our technology, it creates that nano-emulsification. You can stir it with a spoon and watch it disperse before your very eyes. A really good indicator of something that's nano-emulsified is that if it's such a small nanomolecule, then it won't reflect light. So it'll be translucent and you'll have that clarity in that drink. SENS results in a molecule that's roughly 14 nanometers in diameter. And so that is translucent. So you can have that appear just water and have that clarity there. And that's a good indicator of, as Shannon was speaking to, what's happening in the body. You have the traditional edible that isn't nano-emulsified. You're going to have that hour and a half, maybe longer even, before that onset speed, before you feel any of the effects. And maybe in an hour and a half, it hits you all at once, or maybe just a little bit. And so you have that unpredictability. And I think that's the biggest difference really in products that are nano-emulsified, and what we're striving to do with our products that we're nano-emulsifying is to create a near smoking experience where you have that quick onset, it's consistent, and you slowly come down, and it doesn't last maybe necessarily as long as that gummy you took 5 years ago, because maybe it's not converting to the hydroxy cannabinoid that Shannon mentioned earlier. I'm not going to attempt it myself. I'm not going to fall into that trap. But yeah, so I think that results in an experience that's a lot closer to smoking, and something that people are a lot more comfortable with because they know what to expect.
What does a nano-emulsified high, for lack of a better word, feel like, and how is it different than a traditional high?
Like a fat-based high?
Yeah.
So you have your endocannabinoid system, and you have your CB1 receptors and your CB2 receptors, as Shannon was speaking to earlier. You have CB1s and CB2s throughout your body. Your CB1s, though, are primarily located in your head. And that's what's going to give you that cerebral head high that you think of. Whereas something that is attacking your CB2 receptors, that's going to result in more of that couch lock feel, that full body experience that I just got off a boat and I'm a little off balance. So I think that depending on the type of emulsion that you have, you can get a lot closer to that CB1 head high experience in an edible that you can get out of smoking form, per se.
Does it go through the same process as a fat-based edible that goes to the liver, or is it going straight through in a different way?
Absolutely. Yeah, depending on the emulsion that you have and the technology that 14 nanometer in diameter molecule is so small. And this is anecdotal evidence. We have shelf stability testing and things like that, and anecdotal evidence. We want to do a pharmacokinetical study and see exactly what's happening. But so far, the feedback on products and a lot of internal testing, you're getting the effects within 5 to 15 minutes, depending on your endocannabinoid system, because everyone's endocannabinoid system is different. But across the board, with our products and our nano emulsion, you're seeing that in 5 to 15 minutes. And we've even found that you can speed that up a little bit with terpenes. A lot of research has come out about terpenes in the last 6-8 months. But yeah, so our beverages, feeling them that quick, there's no way you're not bypassing first pass metabolism, just like you are with smoking. And so you have to be absorbing some of that before it even makes it to your liver. So it begs the question whether what conversion there is happening, if there is a conversion happening at all. And that's, I think, where you get that quick onset speed is because it's so small. You're bypassing first pass metabolism insofar as that mucosal absorption as soon as you put it in your mouth.
So sublingual absorption, and then also you're not having to break it down like in your stomach as if you would like an edible. So that usually takes anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes for your stomach to break down the edible in itself to get it into the upper intestine. And so I think because that nano is a liquid and it's so small, yeah, it's just going straight through. Your stomach doesn't have to break it down because it's a liquid, and so it's able to go right into the upper intestine and bypass a little bit of that breaking down process that you were saying, which it just makes it so much more faster, which I do love about the drinks, is that it doesn't take as long as the physical edibles.
Does the high last as long?
No. Not usually though, because it is broken down. It tends, for me, and I'm only speaking for me, it tends to last not as long, but I'll usually take like an oil-based one, so that way I have long-lasting kind of thing. So but I'm more of therapeutic using. Of course,
good to have
for
options.
my day. Yes.
It's good to have options. I like to hear other people's routines. That's a good tip.
But it is.
But yeah, I totally agree. I'm not a chemist. I'm the marketing guy, but our chemist over the last couple of years has coached me up pretty good. And from what I understand, when you nano-emulsify those molecules, you're getting smaller and smaller molecules. But for whatever reason, even though they're very small, they have a very large surface area at that point, which makes them a lot more easily absorbed in the body.
That's amazing. I feel like pre-legalization, I've only really ever tried the fat-based edibles, like the butters and all the things, especially obvious, this technology is really new, but the fat-based edibles, going back to them, is it because it's attached to the fat that it makes it longer in your system? It takes your body longer to digest?
Yes, it's a long chain triglyceride. Sometimes you can get a shorter chain triglyceride, like an avocado oil, which can take a little less longer to break down. But there are longer chain triglyceride that THC is binding to when it's fat soluble. It can take a little bit longer for it to be broken down because it is one of the harder chemical compounds to break down for the liver.
That makes sense. I love that we're also starting to see, just because you were mentioning some of the different cooking oils, we're moving away from sweet edibles and finding savory edibles. There's like chefs out there who are making infused sauces and oils that you can add into your pasta and things like that. Either of you have any experience with a different kind of preparation like that? Shannon, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. I usually like a cooking oil in a tincture bottle, and I'll put the RSO in it and warm it up. Once I have my base cooking oil and it's all infused, I can add it to anything I want. So say I love garlic bread. I'll just add a few, like a dropper full of the tincture onto my garlic bread as it melts in there, and then I'll just eat it as is. And then I have my own piece of edible garlic bread. Or I add it to my spaghetti because it's a cooking oil. So if you have any oil in your dish, it will bind to that. Then it makes any food that you're eating personalized and edible. So that way you don't have to make one batch for you and your husband and then another batch for the family. It makes it to where you have your own personalized and you can control it very well too, which is nice. There's a little bit of math involved, but once you know it, it's super easy.
Awesome. I do want to get into that edible math later, but Austin, have you had any preparation or experience with preparations like that?
I haven't really. Fortunately and unfortunately, because I do love the hemp industry and what's going on in the hemp industry with beverages and everything else. But I am in a hemp state, and recreational states they're a lot further ahead of us in terms of the culinary chefs and what they have access to there and those different type of things. The main products we're making are gummies and beverages, but I have had experiences when I've traveled and things like that. And I think it's really cool to see the possibilities that emulsions are really opening the door to. I used the example of the Italian dressing being an emulsion earlier, but it's really cool to think about the possibilities of being able to dose a salad and have that ability. I don't think that many of us really expected something like that could happen so quickly when the industry bloomed, if you will, a few years ago.
With your product, can you add it to oils, or is it just like a liquid based or liquid only type of a thing?
Yeah, so it's a liquid matrix, and you add active ingredients to that liquid matrix. Delta 8, Delta 9, whichever cannabinoid you're working with, CBD, CBG, you would add that active ingredient to the liquid matrix and you stir it and add it to water, and it disperses then and there. No machines required or anything like that. So that's the cool part with scalability. A lot of the other emulsions and technology out there are machines. And so that makes things a lot more difficult. Having that liquid matrix makes it very versatile as well, from being able to ship it really simple standard operating procedures for people trying to make products, whether that's consumers or product manufacturers, that you can share how to do that with, and being as simple as stirring with a spoon and dosing your active to your desired effects and all of those things. I think beverages really, I think the coolest part about what we're doing right now is that with the market, I think you're seeing a lot of people are looking for an alcohol replacement. Hard to do that. The alcohol is alcohol, and so it's in cannabis is cannabis, and so they're two completely different things. But we've found a way that you can have something kick in as quick as alcohol, last about the same amount of time as alcohol, and have that predictable experience, and hopefully bypass the liver, depending on your emulsion. Then you're looking at potentially a true alcohol replacement in that, where you can go drink for drink with your friends and have a similar social experience throughout the night or whatever you're doing.
I was totally the person to play beer pong, but smoke instead of beer.
But how cool would it be to be able to like beer pong with the Nano-Emulsions,
Absolutely.
you know, or like shot for shot?
Yeah.
That'd be so fun.
Yeah, we have a couple products out like that right now that I think you could do that with. Levity Cannabis Spirits is one of our brands that's really taken off right now, and they have a tequila, a bourbon, and a gin in a 750 milliliter bottle, and then they do airplane bottles of each of their flavors. They're doing canned cocktails, and it opens the door to a lot of those possibilities.
I actually, for my birthday last year, I got a few bottles of the liquids, and I took those with me because I don't drink alcohol, but my friends do. And so I just added those into my virgin drinks that I would get, so that I had my own drink as well. So it was nice to be able to be there and still have my drink and be participating on it, but also not having to drink alcohol, which was nice because 200 milligrams was great. It was a good day. I do not recommend that to anybody. Don't do that. Don't do that unless you are built up your tolerance to do. Don't do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great segue to talk about what happens when somebody might take too many edibles. Shannon, do you have any recommendations?
So One, find a nice, comfortable place to just relax. Sugar has usually one of the things that if you eat something sweet, it can help with bringing down that high faster. A lot of people will attest to that. And also, CBD can counteract some of the THC. So sometimes when we feel like, oh my goodness, the world is spinning, I'm scared, I'm terrified, it's just going like a roller coaster. CBD can help counteract some of that. And so, like a liquid CBD drink, it can be very helpful at the time to just bring that down a little bit, because CBD does help to block some of the THC receptors so that you're not going so hard. And honestly, with drinks, less is more. You can always take more. You can't take less. Just small amounts at first to try it out.
Low and slow.
Yeah, I think a couple things there. I think first, pay attention to what you're taking. Read the packaging. The more you know about emulsions and things like that can help you more so than just what the dosage or the ratio is, because products are made differently. If you know that you're looking at a nano-emulsified product, then that 10 milligrams might hit different than different brands 10 milligrams. Keeping an eye out for things like that and trying to educate consumers like that, I think, is a really big deal, so that they can keep an eye out for the right things. And also knowing which cannabinoids you're taking is a big deal too, because they all have different effects. And if you pair different cannabinoids with other cannabinoids at different ratios, they create different effects. If you have a gummy that's 20 milligrams CBD and 10 milligrams D9, that experience might be a little bit different than if the ratios were reversed, or maybe even just adding 5 more milligrams of CBD, you might get a little bit different of an experience. I think that paying special attention to what you're taking is super important. And then I also want to take a second to promo a new product that we have coming out that really hits specifically at this topic. It's called Buzzkill. We have a few different things that we're putting in that product that we've done a bunch of research, and a lot of data has come out on several different things that can help with this problem, which a lot of people experience, and a lot of people are really scared to jump into the industry or try a gummy because they've heard the stories. And I completely understand. I really do. No one wants to be there in that.
No.
So I am excited that we have this coming out and that we've done some of this work and that more research is coming out. But THCV in the right dose can be very effective for this, again, at the right dose. And that's a non-psychoactive cannabinoid. And so we're using a little bit of that. We're using a little bit of L-theanine, which is known to help with those things. And then we have a terpene blend that we've specifically put together as well, including those other ingredients to create this special mix, if you will, that will attack this very quickly, which is key with our technology in that 5 to 15 minutes.
What is so you said L-theanine, which is from green tea, and it has a very calming, soothing effect. And then you were also saying THCV, which typically has, from my understanding, is more of a appetite suppressant. And I have heard that it can help with some nausea and issues with that, like upset stomach, nausea, and more of an appetite suppressant, which is commonly found in higher doses, or higher, I believe, sativas. So I'm very curious to hear that. I want to see the terpene blend on it too, because I do think this would be a very interesting one for like very calm and just relax a high. So I'm very interested to see it.
Yeah, I think it accomplished so much more than we even realized that it was going to accomplish when we put those ingredients together. I think what it turned into being, it won't, to use this analogy, I guess, it won't crash your plane down to earth, but you don't have to wait for it to land either. So we refer to it around the office as the parachute. It will get you smoothly down back to surface, back to ground level, so that it can help with the anxiety, maybe the paranoia, things of that nature. So I think it really worked, especially the ingredients combined and have that entourage effect, if you will. It really achieves those effects.
That is cool.
Yeah, I've seen a couple like get me undrunk things. I've not
Right.
on the internet and stuff, But I'm glad that there's somebody that's attacking the cannabis industry with this, because there's a lot of people, like you said earlier, who are like too scared to try it because they don't want to like overindulge or whatever. But it's nice that there's like a landing pad. Yeah.
And it was funny because when we first started formulating for this project, and we were talking to different people, different groups about it, and doing research and things like that, we got a lot of, well, why would you want that? And then the real true stoners are like, a product that gets you high. And I get it. It's funny. I'm a stoner. And at first I'm like, product to get you on high. That seems a little counterintuitive. But at the same time, if you really think about it, there's always been a time when you wanted to get on high, whether it's you just got off work on Thursday afternoon or whatever, and you go home and you smoke a bowl and you get all relaxed on the couch, and then boss calls you up and he said, hey, clients came in town last second, we got to go to dinner. And you got to go. So then you take a buzzkill and you go to dinner.
That's awesome.
I like it.
It's good for stoners too.
Okay, so let's go into edible math a little bit. So when you're looking at flower or concentrates, you typically see the THC concentration or cannabinoid concentration in a percentage. When you move over to edibles, you're looking at mgs, milligrams. Think about it for a second. Milligrams. How do we get from percentage to milligrams? Whomever would like to field this question. I feel like both of you might be able to.
Shannon, I'm gonna let you take a stab at this one first.
Okay. So this is where it starts when getting your concentrate. You have to know what your percentage is. That is the most important, because if you don't have your percentage, you're not able to calculate how much it's going to be. So this is 89%. But if you move that decimal point back one spot, it becomes 892 milligrams. That's the best way to equate it.
Which product is that, Shannon?
This is from the soil RSO, full spectrum. So like they just like basically smashing the entire plant, which is
Gotcha.
nice. But that's the best way that I'm able to calculate it for when I'm doing edibles. So every one of them will show you a percentage on the back. And then if you move that decimal point back one spot, it's 92 milligrams to convert it over. Once you know that, then you're able to take whatever your volume of like your tincture bottle. So we have 10 milliliter tincture bottles here today. And we're going to take this and we're going to put that in a 10 milliliter tincture bottle. And then we'll divide 10 milliliters into 892 milligrams. And that will give us how much per dropper or pipette is going to be. So that way we're able to calculate from there, even subtract. So once we know how much each pipette is, then we can say if the pipette is 50 milligrams per se, then half a pipette would be 25 milligrams. And we only want 25 milligrams for our, so we'll just do half a pipette. And so that's just an easy way of breaking it down very quickly in a very concentrated form. But you can also do it in butter. And so you're taking your percentage and you would divide it by your volume of butter. So if you had 1.5 pounds, 4 cups, it would roughly be 200 milligrams per stick of butter. And so if you used 1 stick of butter for 12 cookies, you can divide that 200 milligrams into 12 cookies. And so it's just an easier way of learning how to break it down, so that way we're not taking too much on and still being high Monday morning when we need to go to work or something, because that edible is still kicking.
I like that's a nice and easy way to do it, especially when you have the packaging and you have the testing right there on your little sticker. Just move the decimal over and you got your mass. Anything to add, Austin?
That was pretty well said. I can't get much better than that. I think she's dead on. I think that you're seeing the products that are making this packaging a little bit more transparent in terms of what's in it and the dosages and the quality of the different things, attaching full panel COAs. And so you can see different percentages. Those brands are rising to the top because consumers want to know what they're consuming. And the consumers are becoming more educated. That's the direction they want to head, which I think that we all knew that was the natural direction we were going. Props to the brands that are putting the different percentages out there recreationally. Obviously, they're doing a really good job of it. And then the hemp brands that are doing a really good job of that, props to them for sure.
Absolutely. Props to everybody doing all of this. Because honestly, I'm going to have to re-listen to that and write it out, because I felt like that meme, the lady looking at the math meme, that's how I felt. So I'm going to have to re-listen to that a couple times for me to get it down. But math is hard.
Sorry.
No,
I
go
feel
ahead.
when you hear like a flower is 25% THC, I feel like you don't conceptualize what that means, which is that 25% of the nug that you're holding is full of THC. Or for a concentrate, if it's a 89% concentrate, that means 89% of the entire thing is full of cannabinoids. So I feel like people just forget what that even means. So when you have to try to convert it to milligrams, it's like a brain glitch.
Okay, so some brands say that they're like strain specific. I think there are like wild edibles that are like indica, sativa. And I've also heard that doesn't really matter. Does the chemical profile of the source material influence how the high feels? Or when you're creating the edible, are like the full entourage terpenes and cannabinoids and everything getting lost in the process?
I make sativa edibles and I'll make indica edibles, because I do definitely notice some more heavier sedative effect if I'm eating something that's an edible that's indica, terpenes, and cannabinoid based. Whereas if it's a sativa, I may feel just a little chill, but I don't feel like I want to go take a nap. I just feel, hey, if I'm up and still doing stuff. If you sit down, that's when you maybe want to take a nap. Whereas like an indica edible tends to give me more of that heavier set body feeling, which I want at nighttime when I want to go to bed. I want that heavy, all right, I'm out, just go to sleep. So I do personally find a difference in the indica and sativa, as well as different cannabinoids. I know Wild does a orange cannabinoid that is a 100 milligrams THC, 100 milligrams CBC. And CBC has a really happy, uplifted, very similar to CBD, but different in its own way. And it has more of an uplifted mood balancing effect, which I really like and I enjoy it. And it's a happy hybrid. So it's right in between the two. I don't feel heavy and sleepy, but I also don't feel like I'm a little anxious or anything, which is nice. I'm just like perfectly happy. So I do find a difference in them.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a good question with it being cooked out. As a product manufacturer, we're being very careful and intentional in the lab about those different things. When you have different active ingredients, depending on what you're making, whether you're making gummies, tinctures, topicals, different beverages, you're going to be cooking at different temperatures and mixing those ingredients at different temperatures, blending. And if you're not careful, then you absolutely can cook out that terpene profile if you heat things up too hot. And so you have to be wary of that when you're making different products, things like that. In terms of indica sativa hybrid, I think it's absolutely a thing with flower. I think it's a different thing. It's a thing with edibles, but it's a different thing, or at least how it's achieved. With flower, you've got those plants that are grown a little bit differently. The genetics are a little bit different. They lean a different direction, a little bit more cerebral, a little bit more happy creative, or a little bit more couch lock in that experience that you get when you smoke. And it's pretty obvious when you smoke one strain and then you smoke another strain, the different type of feeling that you get from it. With edibles, I think it's been harder to achieve that. I think when you are doing, at least if you're looking at the strains and looking at the sativa indica hybrid from a strain aspect, because a lot of the time, at least depending on the quality of the active ingredient that you're using, if you're putting it into a gummy, sometimes D9's D9, whether it's this strain or that strain. Mm-hmm. And that's just the nature of the game, depending on what you're making and how you're making. So we've found different ways that you can get that sativa indica hybrid experience, whether that's creating a product with a specific ratio that maybe has a certain amount of CBD, a certain amount of D9, a certain amount of D8, and you're, for one, trying to get that more full entourage effect, because you're smoking flower, you're smoking 115 plus cannabinoids. And so you're trying to imitate that with 1, 2, 3 cannabinoids. That's pretty difficult to do. But if you do that and do different dosages and play around with those ratios and those ingredients, then you can get a lot closer to maybe a smoking experience, or something that you could say, hey, this is more sativa leaning, because you're going to want to do something fun while you're doing it, or do it out at a concert or something like that, versus try to go sleep, which would fall into indica. So I think they're very, very real things, but different when you're talking about flower and different when you're talking about edibles. And I'll bring up, finally, I guess I'll bring up terpenes again. That has been a way that we have found is really effective in achieving that sativa indica hybrid type experience, or even just more desired experience that you're after, whether that's I want something that's a little bit more social, or I want something that's more sleepy, or maybe even better for focus, or something like that, or more functional. So terpenes absolutely can influence the experience. We've found through all of our product testing, whether that's speeding up the onset or creating more of that cerebral head high, or attacking your CB2s and getting that more full body experience.
So I'd like to interject on this one, the D9 or THC delta 9. If you think of it like a pendulum, and the cannabinoids, the terpenes that are with the THC delta 9 can swing that pendulum more sativa or more indica, because a hybrid,
Absolutely.
if you just isolate the chemical compound THC, it's going to feel the same every single time. So when we add those terpenes, it gives it that indica or sativa swing, that designer effect that we're essentially looking for. And yeah, the THC delta 9 is always going to feel the same. It's just that those terpenes are so important to giving it that designer effect. And I do love the science behind it.
I think that's dead on. I think that's perfectly said. The terpenes too, if you're adding cannabinoids to create more of that entourage effect, adding terpenes is doing the same thing. Terpenes it's in the plant too, just the cannabinoids. And they're every bit as important, I think we're finding. If you think of the cannabinoids as vehicles headed to your receptors, I think that the terpenes are the fuel that's guiding those cannabinoids to the CB2 or the CB1, and influencing how those cannabinoids are working together as well.
Very much.
Yeah, I feel like when I eat an edible, like a gummy that's just been made with distillate, the high feels shallow, and it just feels like there's something missing. And I think after this conversation, that's terpenes. It's the fuller, more complete entourage effect. So that makes total sense.
Absolutely. I think that's why you're seeing more products with terpenes. And when I say terpenes, cannabis-derived terpenes, not botanical terpenes. Synthetic and botanical terpenes, a lot of people were adding at first, because we just, I think, thought about terpenes as if they were hops, which they're very similar to hops with beer, but they influence so much more than the flavor profile, even though they do play a really big factor in the flavor profile. The cannabis-derived terpenes, they make an incredible product. I think a higher tier product, higher quality product, every bit as much as if you were to take that distillate and go to a higher quality distillate and use a live rosin or something like that. Using those cannabis-derived terpenes, I put those types of products in the same tier. And I think cannabis-derived terpenes are a little bit easier scalable as well than something like rosin, for instance.
All right. So Shannon, what are most people looking for when they're looking for edibles?
Usually smaller doses, people that are getting introduced to edibles. A lot of times I have people that are asking for edibles because they don't want to take pain medication for whatever reason, that's their choice, but they're coming to ask me about how can we take edibles or something. And so a lot of times I'll have to explain that even if you are on a high dose of a narcotic pain medication, your endocannabinoid system is completely separate. And so you're not going to have any tolerance to this at all. A lot of times people think, I have a high tolerance, this isn't going to work for me. I always say start with half of a 5 milligram gummy, or even a half of 5 milligram, 2.5. That's totally fine. Start with a half a gummy the first night, see how it does for you. Do it on a day off, so that way you can enjoy your day. If you're wanting like a daytime sativa gummy that's more has more sativa. And I always say, start off with a smaller dose and see how it does for you. And you can work your way. It's a little bit of figuring it out for you for the first day or two. But once they get it, they're able to say, oh, I like this one. And I take it right after I get off work. I'm able to make dinner. And by the time it's kicking in, I'm right to bed. Or I take this one with my coffee in the morning. And by the time it's kicking in, I'm ready to go do my yard work and get busy gardening and stuff. So it just depends on the person. But I do see a lot of older people coming in and asking a lot of questions about it, which is awesome, and helping them navigate through this ever-changing world of cannabis, which is really fun too, because a lot of times I'll hear, I never thought I'd see the day. And I'm just like, me neither, but here we are.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, it's a super exciting time. I'm seeing products across the board. I really think, with the way the industry has come along in the last few years, the market has really, there's a bunch of segments now in the market, and people are really looking for a little bit of everything. We're seeing obviously drinks from low dose to high dose. People want that low dose option that they can drink like if it were a beer. Then you have your more serious stoners that have higher tolerance and they're looking for that higher dosage, or maybe they're treating something. If they have chronic pain, then that 5 milligrams isn't going to probably do what they need it to do or what they're looking for. They're not looking for necessarily to have fun as much as to treat a symptom at that point. So I think that's one of the most exciting things for me about this industry and being in the cannabis industry specifically, is just that we really are seeing people from all different walks of life coming to us for all different types of products for different reasons. And the fact that we can formulate different things, different desired experiences, and dial those in and be able to give that to people that need that, I think is a really cool thing. And it's a really cool thing to see the market segment into these different areas, if you will, and each one kind of take off in their own way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Tiff, our terpenes episode a couple episodes ago, was saying that she likes the drinkables because it's a really good option to introduce people into the industry. It's like an approachable way to introduce people. And I think that's so true, because you can just add a little bit of this into any drink and allow so many people to try it. And then, I don't know, it's just nice.
Not everyone wants to smoke.
Exactly.
And that makes sense. I don't blame those who don't want to smoke, but they still could benefit from the effects of cannabis. And so being able to have an option to consume it in a way that's a little bit more predictable and more dialed in on a dosage that they can control, that makes it very cool.
Yeah, I fully agree. I love that there's all of these really high quality professional products that have specific formulas, the effects are dialed in, and yet speaking to the wide range of customers you have in the store, I feel like you're still getting the people who come in and they want to make their own edibles. Shannon, can you maybe speak to some of the other products around the store that you can use to make edibles for yourself?
Yeah, some of the things that are out now are cooking oil that is already infused, but it's specifically 100 milligrams only in the little bottle. So that way you're not using too much oil, if you will, which is really nice. And a lot of times they'll use sometimes a distillate, because the RSO doesn't always taste the best. And so a lot of times, like with a it's definitely going to get you high. but is it the designer effect or do you just want to get high? So it just really depends on the person. But yeah, there's cooking oils now, and then RSO making that into its own little bottle that you can infuse everything into. And then there's gummies, there's chocolates, there's caramels, there's hard candies. It's pretty much it's almost in everything, which is nice. So I think the variety of edibles that we have, and especially that they're all 10 milligram pieces, 100 milligrams in a package, which are great. But when you start wanting to make your own, say the holidays are coming up and you got older family members and stuff that you want to give some brownies to, you can get RSO and make your own edibles with the cooking oil that you have at home. And it can get a lot of fun with that because the sky's the limit. If there's something that has oil, the recipe calls for oil, and you know how to make it, you got everything, why not do it? Have fun with it.
That's really cool. I haven't really tried much of that or experimented much with that, but I would really like to. I think it sounds a lot of fun and a cool way to get people involved that is a little bit more normal than just sparking a bowl, if you will. The closest things that we've worked on are things that you could cook with and things like that would be several different syrups that we've worked on, and then a honey. And then another one that really isn't much of cooking, I guess you could say, but it is control your own experience, dose yourself. We have several different projects we're working on right now. I would call a beverage enhancer in essence, so that you could have a bottle and you can spray it into a Sprite or a drink wherever you are and dose it how you want to dose it, and it disperses there right before your eyes. Very
Squishy
similar. It's basically the same concept, but dosed with cannabinoids.
Yeah. So cool. Man, we've come such a long way from making butter in your kitchen, because that's how I've only ever made edibles, is just using my butter with my weed and then just getting so high because I'm not paying attention.
There's still something about cannabis. It's old school, and it usually hits just right.
Exactly. And especially if you're in your own house and like you're just cozy. I think now we can get shake and put the shake, decarb your shake, and put that in your butter and just infuse your butter old school, because it's worth it.
I used to make old school just keef cookies. Just put keef in cookie dough and just put it in the oven, let it decarb, and that usually does the trick by itself.
Wow.
Without even having to make it into butter. So yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Totally.
Gosh.
Totally.
You're welcome.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
I actually did that once with keef and hard candy. I didn't decarboxylate the keef, but when I made the hard candy, it was at almost 300 degrees. It was around 230, somewhere in there. It had stopped bubbling. I just put the keef right into the hard candy, and that actually ended up decarboxylating it while I was mixing it in. And,
nice.
it had an interesting texture, but it didn't leave any grittiness in your mouth, but it got you high. They were great candy.
Yeah. You're definitely not going to get that predictable, consistent experience and onset that we've been talking about with some of these other products. You're going this method.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is for experienced users only.
What about beginners? What is your best advice for a beginner who wants to use edibles for the first time? Shannon, start us off.
Start with the small dose. Start with a small dose for the first night. Try a half a gummy and see how it hits for you. Everybody's endocannabinoid system is going to respond differently. And so if the first night you did not feel anything with 5 milligrams, go ahead and take a whole gummy. That's 10 milligrams. And the second night you may start to feel it or find your level on that, but just always start with a small dose. I usually would go with a gummy because it's very controlled already and it's already portioned out. Unless you're wanting something quick and fast acting, then I would go with the liquid. I've had lots of people come in that were like, I want both. I want the liquid so it kicks in quickly, and I want a gummy so I'm going to stay asleep the rest of the night. I'm like, all right, let's do that. So it's like what I do too. It really just depends on the person, but I always say a small amount to try it and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Start with a small dose, and that doesn't imply taking another gummy in an hour if you haven't felt it yet. Start with a small dose that day, and try another dose another day if you didn't feel it, or if you need to dial it back a little bit. I think that's important, and then do it with somebody. Try it with somebody that is experienced or who has tried that specific product before, because usually they're going to have a pretty good idea of what it feels like. If you haven't experienced it before, it's always better to have your first beer with someone that has drank beer before than. So I think it's the same theory there.
Yeah, absolutely. Any recommendations for people who say they just don't feel it? Maybe they've tried for 4 different nights, they've tried increasing the dose. Any recommendations for them, Shannon?
Eat it with something fatty like ice cream, cheese, some sort of. Some people naturally just don't feel small amounts of like 10 and 20 milligrams. If that be the case, try 20 milligrams, but eat it with some ice cream. So that way, the cannabinoids can ride in with the fats on the ice cream. And dairy fats are a little bit shorter chain triglycerides, so that they're usually broken up pretty quickly. Not as fast as nanotechnology, but definitely a little bit faster than just cooking oil, if you will. I would try it with some sort of fatty food, something that has dairy or butter, something like that.
I would also recommend anybody eating any edible at any point, no matter what type of level you are, is to eat it after you eat a non-infused thing. Don't eat it on an empty stomach. Eat it after you've eaten. It will be more fun.
Yeah, I think that, and I'm getting into more anecdotal evidence here. I think it's a really interesting thing when people try cannabis for the first time and hearing other people's stories of the first time that they tried cannabis, because it really is across the board, and how that went, and how, even for myself, I didn't really have much of an experience until trying it quite a few times. And then all of a sudden, it's my endocannabinoid system is kick-started or something. And then it kicked in, and I feel this now, versus I was doing the same thing before, but I didn't feel it. And I think a lot of people have those type of experiences. I think even more are those experiences when people are trying edibles for the first time that haven't smoked. For instance, if you talk to a smoker that have now tried some edible products, almost always going to say that they felt those products, or that they feel those products, and it's a different type of feeling than if you were smoking. But that usually translates over pretty well, versus people that aren't smokers that try edibles for the first time. It does seem to, and again, I don't know this for sure, but it's almost they need a little bit more help kickstarting their endocannabinoid system, because they've never felt these cannabinoids before, these active ingredients. If you think about smoking for the first time, smoking flower and getting hit with all those cannabinoids, that's quite the kickstart to your system, versus 5 milligrams of CBD, and seeing if that would help with pain or whatnot. So it's more just my personal theory, but I do love to hear what kind of people's journey and what ends up being the thing that kind of works for them, that makes them start feeling different effects of different products. What I would tell someone that's trying products for the first time and maybe doesn't feel something is try a different method. So if you ate a gummy and tried a gummy 3 or 4 times, next time try a tincture and see if you feel that instead of the gummy. Maybe try a drink instead of a tincture, or whatever that method may be. And then I think also try different cannabinoids, different ratios. I think maybe if trying something that's just 5 milligrams D9 versus a ratio that has 3 or 4 cannabinoids, CBG, CBD, CBN, and D9, maybe that's got a better chance at kickstarting your ECS. And so I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've recommended people to do that have had weird experience getting started, that don't feel anything at all or have any type of effect, that have maybe been able to find something that was like, oh, okay, I know what you're talking about. I was giggly and I ate my entire pantry last night. And the more that we can find out about that, to be able to help people navigate that journey, I think is beneficial.
Awesome. Those are some really great recommendations, some really amazing points, and I feel like that's a perfect place to wrap it up. So some main takeaways that we learned today. Edibles offer a really unique high, and the right dose is, of course, going to be different for everybody. Always start recommending with low and slow and work with your customer to help them figure out the journey. Modern day edibles and drinkables that you buy in a dispensary are relatively predictable and consistent, which makes it way easier to experiment with dosage. And infused beverages are a really great option for folks who are new to cannabis or edibles, and those who are looking for a party or social drink that isn't alcohol. Any final thoughts from our panelists?
I just want to thank you guys for having me on. I really love what you guys are doing with the podcast and educating and hanging your hat on education. I think it's huge in this industry, and the more information that we can get out there, the better, so that people can enjoy these products and have a great experience when they do. So yeah, thanks for having me on and getting to share a little bit about what we're doing at Landrace Bio.
Yeah, thank you for joining us today. This was really informative. And before we move on to where we can find you guys on the internet, we implied this throughout the episode, but I just wanted to say it out loud. But if you're a bud tender listening, encourage your customer to write down their experiences and document their experiences, so then you can help them next time, or another bud tender can help them next time. That's something that I think every bud tender has said throughout these episodes, is to engage with your customer and encourage them to write down their experiences. Because it's a community, you got to give and take. It's a teamwork effort here to figure out their journey. And for me personally, I've had to figure out my own dosage on my own. And if I had the thought to write it all out and stuff, I think my journey would have gone a little bit faster. But yeah, so just encourage your people to write it all out and write it down and make a little journal, make it fun for them. All righty, we'll go backwards this time. Austin, where can we find you on the internet?
Yeah, so you can find us at poweredbysins.com. That is our wholesale site where you can find all the products powered by Sins, our technology that we formulate. So you can find our products there. You can also find us at sinstechnology.com, which will break down our nano-emulsification technology, Sins, how that works, all the applications there, and different products that you can make. So yeah, that's where you can find us.
Love it. And Shannon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok as Lady Shaz420. And yeah, social media it's a great tool to get this out there and start training the new onboarding next generation.
Long rips and pizza chips.
I think it's so interesting how edibles are they can affect people so differently.
Yeah.
There's like a genetic component, there's body type and just like how your body is existing right now. There's how much did you eat that day?
Yeah.
There's so many little things that could make make or break your edible experience.
So
Right?
true. So true.
Am I wrong?
No, you're so right. And I'm just, as you're talking, I'm reflecting on my own edibles experience. And there have been moments where I've eaten edibles on an empty stomach,
Yeah.
expecting, oh my gosh, okay, this 20 milligrams or whatever.
Yeah, slow introduction.
And then or it doesn't happen at all.
yeah.
And you're like, okay, this was a bust. But I
Right.
think because it was on an empty stomach, it just metabolized different.
yeah.
And I felt it in different ways, maybe.
Yeah.
And you really just have to like, I don't know. I feel like you have to know what you feel like on edibles as a person, maybe not alone, but like in a singular space. If you're eating edibles out at a party,
Yeah.
it's going to feel different than if you're just eating edibles on your own watching a movie.
Which
You
is
know?
your baseline. So when you can understand what your baseline is, then it's a little bit easier to dose yourself. Or to
Exactly.
even figure out if you want like a distillate edible versus something that was made with more plant material.
Yeah.
Etc.
And what I think I'm excited about for the future of edibles and drinkables is like micro-dosed drinks. Because I want to be able to keep up with my beer drinking buddies
Yeah.
and drink 4 cans of whatever I'm drinking
Yeah.
and not feel like I just drank 40 milligrams or like 400 milligrams
Right.
of like,
Right.
depending on what your dose in the can or whatever is, but like I want to be able to keep up with the party, or even not have a choice of, okay, I'm going to just drink this can and it's 5 milligrams or 2.5 milligrams.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not going to have to save the majority of this random can in my fridge.
Along the same lines, I'm excited for the microdose like snacks. Like an infused bag of peanuts or crackers, but each one is like 0.05 milligrams. So you could eat the whole bag and then you're not 100 milligrams in.
Yes.
Especially the coming cannabis hospitality industry. People are going to figure that out so fast, and it's going to be like definitely a standard for edibles. And again, it makes them more approachable for people.
Yes.
When you're limiting out at 10 or 20 milligrams, but you're able to snack on them like it's a real snack, it's way better. People are
way better.
People are going to enjoy that whole experience more. You're not going to scare people off of weed or edibles.
Yeah. Either that or give me the same thing that I just ate but uninfused.
Yeah.
You know, so I can just keep on eating it.
Yeah.
And not get whacked out of my mind.
Yeah.
But that's a logistical nightmare.
Exactly. Any hoodles, thank you guys so much for this amazing conversation about edibles. And thank you to our sponsors. Thanks to VeraHeal. If you're out there looking for your medical marijuana card, please check out VeraHeal to get connected with a cannabis-friendly physician. And you can find that at veraheal.com.
And make sure you are following us on our social medias. That's where you can enter this giveaway. We have partnered up with Cool Smokes. They create wooden pipes, and this giveaway, you can enter to win one of 3 cool prizes from Cool Smokes. You can either win a 2-piece pipe with a filter. Actually, there are filters somewhere floating around.
Yeah, there was more stuff.
There are. So you'll get the 2-piece pipe with a bunch of filters. You could receive a Cool Smokes 2-pipe smoker's kit with 2 pipes and cleaning stuff and filters and all the bells and whistles. Or you can also win a really beautiful sandalwood and acrylic rolling tray that
it's just gorgeous.
It's just beautiful. So check out our Instagram at chronicgals_420 or Take Root Training. You can check us out on TikTok at take.root.trainin. Or you can enter our giveaway on the newsletter, the email newsletter, which you can sign up for in the show notes. But this newsletter also sends you a freebie that goes along with all of these episodes. So sign up for the newsletter and receive joy all the time.
We have so much great stuff to give away to you guys.
We
So if
really
you're
do.
Not in this universe.
Get
subscribe
in it
now. If you like this show, like this episode, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our show, and make sure you share with your fellow cannabis industry buddies. We're really here to spread education and want to grow the audience.
And make sure if you are listening to this audio podcast and you're interested in watching the video version of it, check us out on YouTube. You can find us there under the Chronic Gals or the Talking Potheads. I'm sure you can find us under Take Root Training. Also, we're there. Comment on our videos. Subscribe over there because that's where we're going to go when TikTok gets banned in January.
Visit our website for information on our training programs and to shop for our amazing coloring books. You can find our Chill Spectrum coloring book all about terpenes, and you can also find our new ECS coloring book all about the endocannabinoid system and how cannabis interacts with the human body. Pretty cool.
Super cool. All right, potheads, keep learning
and keep growing.
Bye.